Sage grouse are the largest North American grouse. It's a very large bird, very charismatic. They conduct these elaborate courtship behaviors where they have secondary sexual characteristics that are quite remarkable to look at. Leks as traditional breeding grounds can exist for long periods of time. As long as the landscape characteristics remain relatively the same, they can occur for probably hundreds of years. But the longest lek that we have recorded dates back to the 1960s, I believe. And the fact that they are sagebrush obligate species, they've come to symbolize the western United States and really represent the sagebrush ecosystem. Across the western United States, sage grouse populations are declining. This is due to many different types of factors, but primarily the loss of sagebrush is why these populations are declining. Sage grouse are tightly linked at every life phase to sagebrush ecosystem, and as that contracts, so do sage grouse populations. Because of the conservation status of sage grouse, they're under consideration at this time for listing under the Endangered Species Act of 1973. In 2010, the decision was made that it is warranted but precluded, meaning that it warrants listing but precludes it because other species have priority. However, it was designated as a candidate species, and by 2015 a decision will be made as to whether or not it will be threatened and endangered. Our research program is largely based on direct measurements from the grouse on the landscape. So we do quite a bit of field work, which we're out in the field actually handling grouse and looking at their movement patterns.
Right after we get over this lip. Tom, why don't you stay out front with me with everybody have their headlights off.
We'll use spotlighting techniques where we go out in the middle of the night and spotlight looking for eye shine with the grouse, and then once we find that eye shine we can move in on them, and it's almost like a deer caught in the headlights. The grouse just freezes and we're able to move up on it and get a net on it very quickly. Once we have the bird in hand, then we conduct a series of measurements on it and calculate a body condition index, so we know an estimate of how much body fat that they might have on them.
Coleman left 1, 51.64. Coleman 3, 31.00.
That way we could relate some of these types of response variables to what factors influence body condition and then how body condition might influence a vital rate like nesting success. From that point on, we put different types of devices on them so that we can track them. And this is a necklace style transmitter that we'll put on the bird. This device we could track on the ground using radio receivers just by tuning in the frequency that it has on it.
Yeah, she's over here.
For more remote monitoring, we use a different system that's a combination of multiple units. Most importantly, it has a GPS unit, and this gets approximately 9 fixes per day. In other words, we get 9 locations from a grouse per day without having to go find that grouse.
So we're about an hour north of Wells. We're not far from a lek called Primrose South. We trapped this hen, 263, and put a radio transmitter on her. Using that, I tracked her to this location where she has her nest. We've come here to check to make sure she is still here. She's been nesting about 2 weeks now. Out here, there's a number of predators who will take out a hen like this. Ravens are the top nest predator for this area. So her success will depend on how well she selected the habitat for her nest. So the nesting cover isn't the only thing that a hen will select for out here. She's also looking to feed her chicks once they hatch. It's really important that they have a lot of insects in their diet. They need a high protein content to put the fat on to grow. They need to be strong enough to successfully survive their first winter.
Probably the most important threat is wildfire and invasive grass cycles. As wildfire moves through the sagebrush ecosystem, it ends up being replaced by an annual exotic grass known as cheatgrass. In a landscape of only cheatgrass, sage grouse don't have the nutritional requirements to meet their life phases, and they just don't have the cover as well. Among most populations, it's not usually just one factor that influences grouse populations. It's a cumulative effect. For example, the loss of nesting cover. Grouse rely on cover like sagebrush for concealment. They're a very cryptic bird, but they need that cover. And when you lose that cover, coupled with an increase in the number of predators in the environment, you have a rather drastic effect on nesting survival. There are certain predators of sage grouse nests, such as the common raven, which have expanded into sagebrush habitat, and their populations are increasing substantially. Some areas within common raven range, their populations are 1,500% what they were in the 1960s. The reasoning for this growth in population is largely because of humans and human development. They use landfills, they eat from cereal crop in the agricultural fields, and not only are we providing them with food, but we also provide them with shelter and substrate for their own nesting. Sage grouse also are an umbrella species, which means that conserving sage grouse populations and the practices needed to do so encompass many other species within the sagebrush ecosystem. These might include several raptor species such as red-tailed hawk and Swainson's hawk, all the way up to large ungulate species like mule deer and pronghorn.